Oh, it says live. I'm hitting the button.
You want to secure your assets.
We can crack the wallet.
Oh, we've done it before.
We've got rigs, character adversary, attribution mode.
With our private keys combined.
Building some kind of blockchain super weapon.
There's just a number of vulnerabilities that are in the smart contracts.
Math. It's probably secure.
They all secretly mine cryptocurrency.
What coin can I trust? Which one is cryptographically secure?
Don't roll your own crypto. CoinSec Podcast. Welcome to the CoinSec Podcast. We are here after some technical difficulties. We got rugged by Restream. But
was it Restream or was it YouTube? I'd like to blame YouTube if possible.
Yeah,
okay.
I think
it's
YouTube.
Rugged by YouTube. You know, all of
Rugged.
it.
It's the big what do you call it? Tech giants. They're going after us because we're disrupting their ecosystem. You know what I mean?
Ryan saved us though.
Yeah. We're back.
We
Funds are
did,
Seifu.
We did get warned for including a spam link in our last show notes, which was the ever malicious MX Toolbox.
It's pretty bad.
No,
it's
so you don't understand. That's where the elite hackers post all their elite hacks. MX Toolbox, bro.
Really?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. It's also
yeah.
spammy, right? Like, dude, every time I listen to a podcast, someone's advertising MX Toolbox, right? It's super spammy. It's like, oh, MX Toolbox.
Yeah.
So it's all about money.
Really?
It's a competitive thing. They don't want us advertising for MX Toolbox.
They think that that Google is gonna lose business to MX Toolbox.
They're
It's
very,
possible.
very competitive. Yeah.
Well, either way, we're here now. CoinSec Podcast is here for your listening pleasure today. We made it, and happy to have you guys. Anyone that's hanging out with us, listening, join in the chat and Discord. We will be answering questions. Feel free to throw anything you want in there. And
except for spam links to MX Toolbox.
Yeah, don't throw any MX Toolbox in there. Apparently, that's not good. If you want to follow along with the show notes for today, all the stories are on coinsecpodcast.com. I'm going to paste a link into Discord now. You can walk through each of the stories with us as we go through them. Or, if you don't want to watch the show, you can just read the show notes. I mean, it's an easy way to just kind of get through it.
I love how the show notes say Ralph's Notion on Notion.
Yeah.
Needs to update that flavor text.
Yeah.
Oh, don't worry, I'm gonna upgrade it. I'll make it look beautiful. You just wait.
Make us all the crocodiles of our respective streets.
Yeah, I'm gonna make an about us section, and I'm going to make characters of all of us. I'm gonna be a crocodile. Heads up, spoiler.
You're
alert.
not going to be a crocodile, dude. That's illegal.
No,
What?
I think Ralph's a little bit famous for being able to create websites in like a matter of moments.
Do you want to get sued by RazzleCon, dude? She does not mess around with the law.
What?
The Versace Bedouin. Oh, come on. We just talked about. I think you actually did you miss that episode?
No, I didn't miss that episode.
Ralph
Ralph did. I have so much follow-up from
episode, and
dude, they let her out on house arrest. She's got the ankle bracelet now.
She's got the bracelet.
She's got the bracelet, and her husband is still in jail because he's the flight risk. Apparently,
She is mad transferring bitcoins right now.
Really?
So we need to have, apparently this sounds like we need to have some kind of wager to determine how many episodes we can go and continue to talk about the Turkish Martha Stewart.
Dude, it has to, as long as it keeps changing, I have to keep talking about it because it's the first time anyone's ever been brought to task for anything that happened on the blockchain.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's true.
It's it brings up a lot of other interesting topics about the fact that some people are like, this shows that crypto is only used for money laundering. And other people are like, oh, this shows that crypto is actually really hard to launder money with, right? Like it's actually really hard.
Yeah, well, so that's kind of a cool thing to highlight throughout the show today too, because we have the first story of today that we're going to talk about is a tracking story, talking about tracking transactions on the blockchain. And so that's actually really interesting to think about, right? For as long as I can remember, everyone's like, oh, it's so anonymous, and all these hackers are just, like stealing funds, and they're, sending it through all these anonymous,
It
different
can't be
currencies.
tracked.
Can't be
It's
tracked.
only used for black market activity.
Well, it turns out it can be.
Following the money still works.
Yeah, right.
Yep. All right. So first up for today, we're talking about kind of a super interesting story that was brought up this week around the DAO hacker. So what probably I would say like what top 3 hacks on Ethereum. The DAO hack that occurred was one of the largest ones, and that was actually what ended up causing the Ethereum Classic fork, right? So whenever Ethereum was in its just young days, it's just a little baby. One of the first applications on it was the DAO, the Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and that application, had millions and millions of dollars that were invested in it, and it was hacked. And from that point on, there were like probably one of the biggest decisions that was ever made was to revert back to prior to that DAO hack happening, so that people could have their funds back. But when they did that, they created a fork, right? And I mean, we could talk about the fork and stuff, but this story is about who hacked the DAO. And so Chainalysis, the tracking company, says that it managed to trace Bitcoin through the popular mixing service CoinJoin to help identify the alleged DAO hacker. An analysis appears to point to a Toby Honish, a 36-year-old programmer who grew up in Austria and was living in Singapore at the time of the hack. Until now, he has been best known for his role as co-founder and CEO of 10x, which raised $80 million and a 2017 ICO to build a crypto debit card. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That was a lot to unpack.
Yeah, right.
So is that money laundering to just start a company?
If it's made from illicit gains, then yeah, one would say.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean,
yeah.
I guess you're just like, hey guys, I want to start a company. How did I get this $80 million?
Right there where you were at, Ryan. The analysis of this says that Shin points to transaction data to back up her claims. And according to research from Chainalysis, the hacker of the DAO sent 50 BTC to Wasabi wallet. Okay, so where's the disconnect here between ETH and BTC? How did the conversion happen there, right? How did they then jump to the conclusion that this Bitcoin was part of that hack? I don't see that in here. I mean, we've seen other stories, and we'll talk about them, about the Wasabi wallet and the CoinJoin being partially trackable at least. But in this case, I want to know how they got to the ETH and then flipped to Bitcoin. Is my question.
Yeah, so there's a few different parties that are like kind of involved, right? Like it is. You're right. It's not like unlike the Versace Bedouin. This is not a like real investigation. This is like government investigation. This is like a, DIY effort, I guess I would say. So you have Chainalysis, which has traced the Bitcoin, but then you also have Laura Shin, who is trying to identify the actual threat of the person.
Yeah,
so.
Investigative journalism, you could say.
Yeah. So I assume that Chainalysis are the people that linked the ETH to the Bitcoin, right?
Well, the other thing you got to consider, though, is that the DAO hack, when that happened, right, it was forked, and the ETH that he had was ETH Classic, right? So we're talking about a separate chain. So, like you wouldn't see this on the standard, ETH chain at this point.
Well,
right?
It took a while, right, between the DAO hack and it's like a month or so and the hard fork. So I think you had some time to transfer the funds out between that time frame. Plus, other people also stole, or at least it was at risk of being stolen. So I'm not sure if anybody else followed along there.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, so the thing that I think is kind of interesting here is, we've talked about mixing services in the past and how, leveraging certain mixing services tends to people have relied on that as a
Mhm.
valid means of protecting their identity. But I think the biggest claim throughout this entire story is the fact that Chainalysis apparently had a way to track CoinJoin transactions.
Mhm.
Right, and they refuse to disclose information to the journalist about how that is happening, right? So they basically just said, we help trace funds despite the attackers' attempts to cover their tracks with mixers. So how are they doing it? Who knows? Maybe they have like internal feeds or something. I don't know.
It sounds to me like they're still doing what we've talked about on several episodes about clustering. I'll kind of bring it back to that, is if you see all these transactions going into the CoinJoin and getting spread around, but then they all kind of end up going back to the same place, then you can kind of, oh, well, that's all related. At some point, unless you keep them all separate, right, they all have to go back to a central cash out point. So I think that's probably a mistake of the attacker cashing out that way. But again, they do say in here a little bit about them getting the Bitcoin. I think they were actually just selling the ETH or ETC to get the Bitcoin, and then that's where they tracked from there. But it doesn't specifically say, so that disconnect is still kind of there.
Yeah, and also, so Tom Robinson, the co-founder and chief scientist at blockchain analytics firm Elliptic. So I guess Elliptic is another company similar to Chainalysis that does transaction trackings. Did mention that it is not possible to demix all CoinJoin transactions, but acknowledge that some transactions can be traced. And he actually ended up saying that typically it's due to a situation where the Wasabi user has made a mistake. Now, what that mistake is an interesting thing to consider, right? Like, what is it that the user did wrong, right? And actually leveraging the application. I mean, it could be as simple as like what we've talked about, like what you mentioned about, sending in like a certain amount of ETH into the mixer or Bitcoin in the mixer. It gets mixed up, and then you just reassemble it in another wallet somewhere with the same amount.
Yeah, that's what it says. It says address reuse is bad practice that makes it possible to track funds. So they probably
taking sending it back to your original wallet, right? Saying, hey, wallet A, go through the mixer and come back to wallet A. Careful there.
So, I mean, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of similar to like tracking a threat actor across multiple, targets. If they reuse anything between the two, you can identify, okay, well, you must have popped them and popped them and popped them. So, you just make a list of bad wallets or bad addresses and associated with an individual person, then you just track them anywhere you possibly can, right?
Jack had a good question in chat. So basically said that, in regards to ETH Classic and ETH, with it forking and being right alongside the same chain, does ETH double in value then? And so anytime like a fork happens, it's actually a super interesting event. And I've seen it happen a few different times from ETH, and Bitcoin had Bitcoin Cash at one point. And basically, so what happens is, if you think about miners can take a chain and they can mine on that specific chain and determine what's valid after the blocks that have been mined prior to that. So you have all, the hashes of everything that's been mined before. And if I decide as a miner that I'm going to approve transactions on a different path, you can create what's called a fork, right? So you have all the typical miners that are still mining the same chain, that are continually approving transfers and making sure that chain is valid. But you can also just go off and create your own chain. And that's basically what happened with ETH Classic and Ethereum whenever it finally merged over. And it was actually a really big battle, because you had people that were diehard that you should conserve the the validity of the blockchain, and like there should be no reverting transactions. There should, like the purist, right? Like that, you think about a decentralized network. There shouldn't be really like a hey, you know what, we got hacked, so let's just revert it. And that's kind of what happened. And so ETH Classic are a lot of those kind of like diehard people that wanted to keep the network pure, right? Like even though the hack happened, they wanted to keep that. So they created, so they kept mining that chain. Ethereum got forked off of it and reverted that DAO hack. And just by having enough miners to continue to process transactions on that chain, kept that going separately. So it ended up creating these two separate chains, two separate currencies altogether. So when it comes to value, right? Like the value is in who wants to, own the classic version versus the new version. And that's why you see, some older, you still see some people that are, interested in owning like ETH Classic versus ETH. Same thing with Bitcoin Cash. So, Roger Ver decided that, his version of Bitcoin was different than what was happening on the current Bitcoin network and forked off and created Bitcoin Cash. Don't think that's gone so well. But in general, that's typically how forks work, right? Like,
at first they were the same price, then the market went to play, and I think right now ETH is a lot more than ETH Classic.
So when the hack actually happened, ETH was at $18, I believe, and then immediately after the hack, it was down to $11. So there was some price fluctuation, but now we think about, man, if I could have just bought ETH at $11,
Yeah. Well, and what is ETH Classic at now? It can't be at 1,400.
So when ETH Classic first hit the chain, it was obviously zero. Because there's no price, but it's trended steadily along $2 for a long time. I'm not sure where it's at now, but it was a good percentage less than
26.98.
26, yeah. So not compared to Ethereum, yeah, not a big increase, right?
Yeah, it's always probably been around like the 2/3 to 1/2 mark, it seems like. But yeah, it is totally market forces. Like once it starts trading, the price is totally, I think the supply is the same, right? So, or similar.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, moving on. Next story. We've got an OpenSea phishing attack that netted over $1.7 million. Now, this one kind of freaked me out a little bit.
So yeah, Bo was like sending all kinds of messages.
Yeah,
watch out. Yeah.
Listen, no. So Saturday night, I was actually sitting here working on another contract assessment thing with Steve, and we broke for dinner or something, and then I came back and I saw what was happening in real time, and I was like, oh my god, this is bad. And so here's the thing: OpenSea is migrating to a new contract because of a lot of the listing problems that they've had, right? So we've had. You've heard multiple stories about, Bored Apes getting sniped and whatnot, right? Because they've, had a previous listing or whatever. So OpenSea decided to migrate to a new contract. And this has been something that they've been, emailing about and trying to talk about. And so everyone's kind of known this is coming up. And so this weekend, 254 NFTs were stolen in roughly 3 hours. And most of those were really, really expensive ones. And Jack just mentioned, and while this was happening, the OpenSea team was at ETH Denver, and we're on stage. I'm pretty sure like the one of the guys from OpenSea was on stage while this was happening. So it was interesting because everyone assumed that that there was an issue with the contract, right? Because what OpenSea has been saying is basically go migrate all your previous listings over to the new contract because actually today, the 25th, they're cutting it off and all previous listings are going to go away. And, so that has to be like if you wanted to list something on the new contract, you have to migrate it over. So with that being said, a lot of people were, of the mindset that because they had transferred over to the new contract, that's where the vulnerability was, which would have been insane, right? Because if there was a vulnerability in the new OpenSea contract, that could have meant like
it would
all
have
the
been worse.
NFTs,
yeah,
right?
It would have
like,
been worse.
Way worse. But as it was happening, in real time, like just watching the wallet that was stealing these NFTs, like you just saw them like here's like 20 apes from one or 20 NFTs from like one account. Here's 20 from another account, and it looks like, or looked at that point in time. Like they, were basically exploiting vulnerability. What it turned out to be, though, is it appears to be, in fact, a phishing attack of sorts. And, back to token approvals, right? We've talked about token approvals on this show a few times, where if you approve a contract to have the approval to send tokens that you own, then you basically give it the ability to take them, and there's nothing you can do about it. You sign that transaction. One of the big differences with this one that I saw that I thought was interesting is that typically we see approvals for like specific NFTs or specific tokens. In this example, the attacker crafted their attack in a way that the signer only had to sign one time and basically create a blank check of sorts. And the way they did that is they created a partial contract, got the authorization, and left large portions of it blank, meaning that they were able to basically sign the approval to send everything from that wallet.
Flexibility, right? The ability, that's a feature, right? To be able to send those, blank checks can be useful.
Yeah. So one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting too is that I don't know timeline wise when that happened, right? Like, and I don't think that there's been any information given to when the actual like phishing portion happened. But people are assuming that because of that contract migration, because people are going to be moving their stuff over to the new contract, that's probably why the attacker initiated all these transactions at one time.
Right. Transitions are a great time to make an attack because there's so much uncertainty, and also knowing that the creators themselves, who are they going to be the ones disabling the contract, are indisposed. That's like crazy.
So be careful out there.
Has anybody pointed to the infrastructure that was used for the phish, like a website with the token approval or anything like that?
I have not seen any information about the actual phish. One of the things I did see though that I thought was kind of interesting is OpenSea basically said that it wasn't an email attack, which where they're getting that information from, I'm not sure. But we've seen all kinds of phishing attacks. That's what we do, right? We're red teamers, and usually it's email. But with the modern day Discord usage that everyone's using, right? I mean, it could have been like Discord DMs.
They're actually soliciting the public for like any tips they have. Like they're literally saying, if you have specific information that could be useful, please DM OpenSea support. So
that's a fish.
That's definitely a fish.
Do not DM OpenSea. No, I think it's legit. But yeah, that's a good example.
Oh, there's Corey.
What? What happened?
We lost you for a second. All right, so be careful out there. Don't sign things that you shouldn't. Just be aware. Especially when you have a wallet full of valuable NFTs. Don't just go signing random contracts, especially if they're sent to you via Discord or email.
Yeah.
All right, so next up, possible rug pull on Ariva coin. I saw this one this morning. Peck Shield had an alert for a potential draining of a staking contract that was then swapped for 1,700 wrapped BNB. So Ariva's price dropped 93.7%. Drained funds were then deposited into Tornado Cash. Ariva claims a hack happened to their staking wallets. Ariva says the losses of their relevant investors will be covered by the Ariva team.
Interesting.
A hack. Yeah. So what's funny to me is the price drop, and then if you scroll up a little bit, Ryan, to the red line, and then they immediately buy back. Like, who's buying that after that?
Bots.
Yeah. I was gonna say probably bots that are set to trade at certain thresholds. But yeah, the funny thing with this is I have my rug pull bingo card here, and that's actually, so we've got Tornado Cash, that's a box. We got hacked, that's another box.
Is the Ariva team doxed? That's the third one, right?
Yeah. So it is also interesting. They're like, we're gonna make it back up to you. That's not ruggy. So maybe it's not.
I mean, listen, if they have a Medium site, that's your first indication that this could be going toward a rug, right?
Like that's their main website.
Yeah, that's how they pump it, right?
It's funny to see how the different, I don't want to, assume, but it is funny to see how different entities choose. Like, do you just cut ties and run? Do you say like, we will work with you, we feel for those who are affected? Like, choose your angle. Do you want to just disappear, or do you want to pretend and try to toe the line when really you're just about to be the crocodile of Romania Street or whatever?
So they have CertTech audit and
two major findings in that CertTech audit.
Yeah, right.
Was one of the findings the creators have no identity?
Yes, that's I think one of them.
Let's see.
Interesting. Yeah, so
the creators are not real. It should be a finding.
Creators are not real.
So now in the tweet, we can see that they did an upgrade on the contract to remove the withdrawal function or something like that. So let's talk about that for a second. Can you approve a contract for transfer and stuff like that, and then the admin comes in and upgrades it behind you, and then you've already approved that contract, right? Is that kind of what happened with OpenSea?
Yeah, so exactly. So, if you go and approve something and then the contract upgrades, you're basically still just have that approval on that old contract, right? So the new contract can't do anything with that.
Mm-hmm.
What is kind of funny though is one of the major findings of the CertTech audit was a centralization risk. So any compromise of the owner account may allow the hacker to take advantage of this and transfer ownership to malicious account, maliciously pause and unpause, update the blacklist, and mint an uncapped amount of tokens. So
yeah, let's just go ahead and say, as a theoretical investor, if you're reading the CertTech report and it says that, consider not investing.
Yep. Do your own research.
Yeah. Like, central keys like that are a bad, like, you wouldn't do that. So a pool shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
All right, moving on. So this is an interesting kind of story we've got here around Canada freezing crypto wallets. So,
well, trying to, yeah.
Yes.
The government not understanding crypto is basically the underlying thread of this entire process.
Yeah, so Canada's national police have sent letters to cryptocurrency exchanges asking them to freeze at least 34...
letters. That's the first. That's
they're
probably like, hey, has anyone checked the mail in like the last 3 months?
Yeah, so any of the accounts that were allegedly connected to the Freedom Convoy protest under the Emergencies Act, recently invoked by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Banks have also received letters about designated persons tied to the protests as the police vow to take back Ottawa.
Yeah, so for anyone not in the loop who has been living under a rock, basically Canada's having its own little January 6th moment where a trucker convoy has stationed itself in Ottawa, which is the capital, and they're just causing hazards for the people. They're blocking streets and things. And the government has decided that they've overstayed their welcome and wants them out. Other people are donating to them using cryptocurrency, and that's how they're, purchasing things, etc. So the government is just saying hey, you can't have money, and then the cryptocurrency response has been pretty funny. There's one specific letter which I'm assuming we're going to read, but it's basically first of all, we can't do this. Second of all, we don't want to.
There was also, I'm seeing if I can find this video of Ted Cruz being bullish on Bitcoin, and there's a video of him talking about the Canadian truckers and why basically like self-custody, right? You can't freeze somebody's self-custodied assets like that. So it's just a quick video of him agreeing with the fact that, Bitcoin is kind of made to circumvent the financial institutions, right? I mean, that was really the whole premise behind it. So now that it's being used like that, and disregard the left or right leaning stuff up there, but just wanted to bring that out as a fact that it's getting to the point where people are starting to realize that Here we go.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it is unfortunate that it can be used for, illegal or whatever activities, right? Like the government has decided that this activity is illegal. That's why they're sanctioning it or putting controls on it. And don't get me wrong, like I understand where they're coming from. Like, I would be pretty bummed if someone, was paying for illegal things using cryptocurrency, and they are, right? There are people buying bad things with Bitcoin or whatever.
No,
but that is like the nature of money, right? It's not like people aren't doing that with cash. You know that people are probably carrying stacks of cash over to these truckers too, right? Like, I mean, what are they doing? Like, we are inspecting all, cash transactions coming in and out of these. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just funny. Like, I mean, they're pulling all the levers they can pull to try to dial in some level of control. But yeah, I mean, it's US dollars. I've seen a lot of movies where there's, people buying drugs with US dollars. Does that mean the US dollar is illicit and used for bad activities?
Right. Yeah. Everybody, people stereotype, and that's kind of what happens with the crypto industry as well, which is unfortunate. It's just good to me to see it being used kind of like how it was meant to be used, not to circumvent law or anything like that, but to be your own bank basically and keep your funds to yourself. People don't have to know your address to link it to you and things like that. So the only thing is that I think that's going to happen in Canada is those centralized exchanges are probably going to get more scrutiny in the future. So people may not sign up for them. I don't know. It might hurt the Bitcoin
I will say
exchange industry.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the centralized exchanges are affected by this, like your Coinbases, etc. But I will say that it is also kind of a moot point because how are these protesters using the funds, right? I think it's mostly that because ultimately the follow the money approach works here too, right? They can't be buying groceries in Bitcoin.
Well, you can in some places, and we think about countries that have adopted Bitcoin. A lot of these places I go to here now where I live, you can just scan the QR code. The QR codes are bad, but you can scan the QR code for your wallet, right, and just pay with crypto right there. And I think that maybe be the incentive and where things eventually go, so that when I go to the gas station, I'm like, man, I want a pack of gum and a soda. I'm just gonna swipe my crypto, right? And it's that easy. It's that easy, and that's kind of where we're going. Whether or not, but I would guess with Canada the government, and the truckers can use it, I don't know.
Yeah, I would guess with the government being involved, the government can say, don't take cryptocurrency payments and within a 50-mile radius of this.
Sure, and that's kind of lies in the problem, right? The government saying what you can and can't do. So
well, because ultimately, I mean, I'm sure there are people that are like, hey, I'll give you 2 apples if you give me 0.00002 Bitcoin, right? Like, I'm sure there are like bartering that's happening, I'm sure. But as far as like what the government can control, it's going to be difficult for them to say, oh, if you're a nearby grocery store and you take crypto, like those assets will be seized or whatever. They probably can do that. But yeah, it's interesting to see because we always play with this, right? We talked about it at the very beginning of the show. There's always a tie between assets the government monitors and maintains and decentralized assets, because ultimately, like, the government has visibility into like their currency, the goods that flow in and out of their country, etc. But they don't have control over the currency itself. Right. So it's interesting. It's a funny letter though. The one there's I forget which company it was, but one of the wallets was basically like, "Hey, this goes against everything we stand for, and also we just can't do it." So sorry.
Yeah, that actually brings us into the next story, which is kind of similar. So other big news, Russia and Ukraine. There's a war going on, and so I've got a few bullet points here to talk about in terms of crypto-related things going on. So the first one is how Russia could use crypto to evade sanctions. So earlier this week, Russia invaded Ukraine, and because of that, a number of sanctions were created in the aftermath of that. So far, the international community has held back from the UK's demand to bar Russia from the SWIFT network, which, if you're not familiar with SWIFT, SWIFT is basically how banks send funds to each other. And if it ever got to that point, right, where they're just completely cut off from SWIFT, like what could Russia be doing with Bitcoin? Is that going to drive their usage up?
Right. So I think a couple points for that is, even if they received Bitcoin, they have Bitcoin. We know Russia is one of the biggest mining countries as far as Bitcoin's concerned. Where would they cash it out at? Because if it's an exchange within Russia, they're kind of trading for their own thing there. They would have to, bring money. The point is to bring money in from the outside, right? Generate revenue. You're not going to do that just buying it, selling it to and from yourself. So they have to get it from somewhere else. Maybe that's China. Maybe they use Chinese exchanges and they're able to transfer actual cash back over to buy things. Because I don't think they're going to be at an arms dealer somewhere out in the middle of something a stand and be like, hey, I want that ballistic missile over there. Here's my Bitcoin address. Let me just scan that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we talked about this. We talked about this with previously when I think it was like North Korea had funded a lot of their illicit cyber. They steal assets this way, and then they, like, we were joking, like, do they just go on Alibaba and say, like, give me 10,000 kilograms of rice and I'll send you 2 Bitcoin? Or like, how does that, that, ultimately it's going to come down to the flow of the actual inbound and outbound, like Steve said, international funding and international exchanges. So I think,
it's possible they can do it, right? As long as somebody else is kind of giving them the cash. Again, like, I don't think they're going to just mine Bitcoin and then just give it to themselves.
Yeah,
there's got to be some kind of transfer.
And like Steve said, it's not going to be the whole inter Russia trading of assets. It's going to be Russia wants to purchase food, Russia wants to purchase fuel. Who will send it to them for Bitcoin? And the answer is, with sanctions, probably no one. Other than, like maybe a China or someone that's maybe closely allied to them. But, it's not like they're just going to go on Alphabet and buy like 30,000. You can't buy like, can I get 1 tanker of jet fuel, please, delivered? Like, there's no eBay. There's no, that doesn't, yeah.
That about.
I was going to say,
right?
idea. Come on.
The logistics. I mean, dude, I've seen Lord of War. I can imitate Nick Cage on, but yeah, I mean, dude, it is an interesting thing where it's like the whole SWIFT thing is funny that they haven't actually gone that route. I know that they are like seizing specific foreign oligarchs, people that, like, apparently there's like some heavy investment in certain like soccer teams in Britain and things like that. So they are like going after the oligarchs' activities in other countries, but it'd be funny if they're just like, your Bitcoin, they're ours now because of your, they can't really do that.
So, similar topic, Ukrainian military receives hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin, which actually I just saw another number that said it's over 4 million at this point in Bitcoin donations to a pro-military Ukrainian group. One of the things that I thought was kind of interesting about this is that they were also on Patreon. And it had raised $300,000, but Patreon pulled it because of it being connected to, like, supporting the person.
Oh yeah, dude, you can't be like, subscribe to my Patreon for tactical nukes. Like, yeah, you can't, like, literally. This is the world we live in now. Fund my war. Like, what perks would I get? Like, we'll put your name on a Russian helmet or something. Like, what? Like, this is it's so dystopian. I mean, it's kind of similar to like watching it play out on social media and all that. Like, the war in the modern time is so confusing. Patreon funding a Ukrainian military. I did not have that on my disaster 2022 bingo card, but man.
You should have, though. You should have.
And third point I want to make here is that Russia controls 11% of the Bitcoin mining power. You know,
only 11%. Wow.
That's third in the whole world. Like it's like the U.S., Kazakhstan, and Russia.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I think we can all agree that the amount of energy that's going to mining is so overkill. The network will work with what, like 266 nodes or whatever. So like.
Well, it's good that it's decentralized, because then, like, if one country goes down, like we saw with China, right, the nodes are fine as long as it's spread out and decentralized. I think the network will stay relatively healthy no matter what. Even
it's unkillable.
BGP,
even
a few BGP hijacks, and it'll stay resilient.
Yeah, no, it'll be fine, even if because it's a classic example of like of all the concerns people might have, this should be the last concern, that Bitcoin will stop working. There's basically no way, because the profitability gets so high when I would be freaking setting up Bitcoin miners, and so would everyone else in a country that isn't at war. So
yeah.
All right, moving on. So this is another story about an NFT platform called Magic Eden. So this one's on Solana. So one of the things that I thought was kind of interesting is, some of the main platforms on Solana, like Magic Eden and Solanart, they have moved to this model where they now like require like KYC basically. If you're going to post as a collection on their platforms, which is a very different model from OpenSea, right? OpenSea is just like, hey, like, you want to post anything and sell it here, just free to do whatever you want.
It has open in the name.
That's true. That good point. Good point. So they announced Saturday that they're relaunching with the now using KYC to prevent future scams. Which
so OpenSea, they don't do. They might do the KYC, but they go more based on like they do the verified collections and verified drops, right? Like that's, in my opinion, a better way to address it versus being like, oh, you're a creator, send me your driver's license. All right, you can't be malicious. Like that's not. That KYC doesn't stop fraud. That doesn't make any sense. It's I don't know, whatever. That's just my opinion. The way that the other exchanges are addressing it is sufficient in my opinion, but I don't know, whatever.
I think
take that complaint to the local police, right? Hey, so and so stole my bored ape, and they're gonna be like, so you're housing apes? What's going on?
Why was it bored? Did you not stimulate it enough?
Did you feed that ape?
Also, do you have a permit for that?
Yeah, and I think the KYC is mainly around the idea of doing rug pulls, right? Like they're basically trying to dox people so that they don't just like create all this hype about a new project, put it on the platform, and then rug pull, right?
Right, but would they verify? I guess they would verify a rug. I guess is what we've learned.
Well, we've seen one of those get verified before. Oh, I forget which one it was, but it was on like 2 or 3 episodes ago. Somebody verified through a verification service and then still rugged the project. So it can still happen. Okay. And like Corey says, like, you're going to make 10 million and they're not going to come after you. That's a net win, right? So
what's the quote, Corey? What's the quote?
Yeah.
I don't even know what the quote is. It's something like $100 million, no downsides. I'm in.
Yeah.
I think it's more marketing than anything. It's them being like, hey, we got pictures of people's driver's license. It's safe over here. Come to the Eden. Or, like, dude, yeah. Okay.
Next story is Bitmex founders plead guilty to Bank Secrecy Act violations. So Arthur Hayes and Benjamin Dello, founders of crypto exchange Bitmex, have pleaded guilty to violating the United States Bank Secrecy Act. Per press
release. Was a Bank
release,
Secrecy Act? Was it a secret?
They willfully failed to establish, implement, and maintain an anti-money laundering program at Bitmex.
So that's a classic example, right? You think the centralized exchanges are all crypto-y? No, they're following U.S. laws.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that is
Or they're
interesting.
not,
I mean,
and they're getting fined $10 million. Right?
Yep.
right,
Each.
$10 million. That is actually interesting. That is like from the government. I mean, dude, I'm pretty sure Elon Musk got fined like 250 grand for basically making like a shit ton of money in pump and dumps, right? Like, like he tweeted like buy Doge, and he got fined like $10. So, 10 mil is a serious fine from the gov.
Next up, Coinbase adds support for Ledger hardware wallets.
Cool.
So the other thing with that last one, sorry to double back, but
Oh.
that was recent too. That was in 2020. So like they're actually not like 10 years behind like the government usually is. Oh no, never mind. It says September 2015. They are 10 years behind.
Yeah.
I lied. Okay, so if you do start an exchange, close it within 5 years and the government will never see.
Yeah, right.
So I thought this was cool because, Coinbase being like the largest exchange out there, we talk a lot about, not using, custodial services where, they host your coins and keep it on an exchange, right? Because that creates a scenario where if they get hacked, can easily steal your funds. So in this case, Coinbase has implemented the ability to leverage a hardware wallet now, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how does it work on the back end? Do they transfer the funds to the ledger?
It says that there's a wallet browser extension, a Coinbase wallet browser extension, I guess, probably similar to MetaMask, I'd guess, where you're connected to the exchange account likely, and then transfer it to your own hardware wallet, I would imagine.
Why didn't they just use MetaMask?
Well, so they are MetaMask. They're a competitor, right? That's exactly why they didn't use it. But I will say this could introduce all kinds of fun vulnerabilities with how these contracts are working. Like, how does it transfer the funds? Is it just, I don't know. There's a lot of potential issues. I also will say it's interesting because at least I have a Trezor. I don't have a Ledger, but they don't support. It probably doesn't it's not a 1-to-1 between the assets that are supported by Coinbase and the assets supported by Ledger. So it's interesting. I wonder if there's just certain assets that you can't transfer using your Ledger wallet.
Probably.
And then the last one, Steve just added that I missed this one this week, but Flurry Finance, vault theft. What's going on with this one, Steve?
Yeah,
I've
so
seen
they're
Fast and Furious.
So they're an aggregator, so they've got things on multiple chains, and it looks like this one possible exploitation, flash loan attack. Cue Corey's flash loan alert.
Yeah,
we should have like an audio clip that we play every time someone does a flash loan attack.
Yeah, right. So they created a malicious contract. Basically did a flash loan, borrowed the tokens, and then never paid them back. After a while, it says though, after a while, the attacker returned the flash loan. So was that just a generous gesture, or was because flash loans by default are the same transaction, right? You send it, you receive it, it's there and back. So I don't understand the details behind that.
Man, there's so many tokens going on that I've never heard of. What the hell is
Yeah,
Finance
Row tokens
Rabbit? What is Row
Yeah,
tokens?
so the attackers only exploited funds in the Finance Rabbit strategy. So think of that as like a pool, right? So the pool probably had multiple tokens in it, including the Row, what do they call it? The Row token, RHO token. And that's what they suspended was the contracts for the RHO tokens. So if you're holding anything over there, go revoke, be careful, and hopefully you didn't get completely rugged.
Also, how did you even find out about it? Because none of us have ever heard of it.
So on my tweet deck, I use TweetDeck, and I actually have a term search called DeFi hack. So as people are like, latest DeFi hack, it comes up on my feed there.
So now you guys know how to inject into Steve's stream and get him to click on pretty much anything.
Yeah. Top of the search results. I always click the first one.
Alrighty. Well, that is the show, guys. You guys have anything else you want to talk about?
I mean, Versace Bedouin update. She's out on house arrest. She is out. They let her out on bail. I think it's like a $5 million bail or $1 million.
$5 million on bail.
Did they take Bitcoin for the bail?
They had to.
That's so.
Only
a couple
who came
of other
from the Alphabet address.
A couple of other details that I kind of realized after the fact, which is one, when they subpoenaed their cloud accounts, they got immediately 80% of the assets total back. So like at least right now the government has 80% of the total 4.5 bill. And yeah, they let her out on house arrest. They did not let the husband out, which is interesting. I guess he's a flight risk because he can like flee to Russia. But it also kind of maybe plays to some behind the scenes stuff around him maybe being more the mastermind, the potential, the person that was kind of more in control of things, and her kind of just being there and making rap videos.
Ooh, rap videos.
Hey, them rap videos cost money. I know. I've been there.
Yeah, right, dude. These iPhones, man. The cameras these days, they're good enough.
Yeah, all those VFX visual,
Yeah, no, we got it. Cool. Well, all right, guys, it's been a good show. Thanks for joining us. If you are listening, we actually have some listeners that are just hanging out with us. This is awesome. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and follow us on Twitter. Come hang out in the Discord with us, chat as we find these stories throughout the week, and we'll see you next week. All right, guys.
Take care. Thanks, everyone.
Later.
Bye, guys.
Thanks all.